This game perhaps hurt me more than round 23 last year. I can't even put my finger on why that is, considering that round 23 ended our season and today we still have 5 games to make amends. Perhaps it's because I'm such a negative Nancy, and in my heart I know that this loss might signal the end of our season, given that I personally don't believe we can win the required amount of games needed now to make the finals. It hit me as hard as any game of football ever has, and reminded me of my first such pain generated as a result of a football game which occurred in the 1987 preliminary final. 1987 was the year that I discovered my footy mojo. I was 12 years old. I'd been going to the footy for years, but up until that stage we were nothing but a basket case, and I wasn't all that interested or invested. However, our return to the big stage, being the finals, sparked something in me, and I was all in from that famous win out at Footscray. The whole do it for Robbie, the fairy tale nature of it all, the winning and the results falling our way to make the top 5, and then the demolition job we did in the first 2 finals. I now had demon blood flowing through my veins, and it has never left. I'd never experienced such a feeling of loss or emptiness as I did after that preliminary final. I had lost a grandparent when I was 7, but I was way too young to feel the magnitude of that event at that stage in my life in the same way someone older would. I was 12 and had a stable and happy upbringing and family life. I'd never had the heartbreak of breaking up with someone. I was new to the footy roller coaster, and it had been all highs that I simply wasn't prepared to have the rug pulled out from under me in the manner that it was ripped in that preliminary final. I was despondent for days afterwards, and I don't think I have experienced that feeling again in my footballing life. I suppose if the results of the 88 and 2000 grand finals had been closer, then perhaps I would have. But fast forward to last weekend. 31 years after my first footballing heartbreak, I am now dyed in the wool. Football has been my life. It has been the constant in every aspect of that life since then. It's been with me through birth, deaths, marriages. Now, I would never disrespect or insult anyone by equating footballing lows to losing a loved one or the highs to the birth of my kids. But it is a huge part of my life, as it is to the majority of you who are listening to a Demons Footy podcast either live or on their commute to work. If you're listening to this podcast after that soul-crushing defeat, then you know what I mean. This loss hit me hard. It's easy for the non-footy diehards in my life to say, it's just a game, but for me, it's more than a game, and I'm not saying that with any connection to the god-awful footy show theme. It is more than a game to me. We're staring down the barrel of missing the finals again for the 12th year running, and for the 2nd year when we should have made it. We have a very talented team. We are leading the league or very high up there on many of the stats, but we still might sit 10th at the end of the season. Going into the last quarter, we were on track for one of those really special wins that would have lived on in our memories for a very long time, and it was ripped away from us in the most devastating way possible. We've been out of the finals equation for 12 long years. Many of those years we were non-competitive, which, by the way, stung hard too, mainly because we were humiliated as the butt of so many jokes and seen as irrelevant. Through that time in the footballing wilderness, we have had so many false dawns that I still sometimes question whether this promising, talented and competitive list is just a mirage, but that might just be my MFC SS creeping in. This game hurt because of the importance of this game on our finals aspirations. We would have been 2 games and % clear of Geelong. We would have been competing for a Final 4 spot instead of scrambling for a Final 8 spot. Beating Geelong on their home turf would have made an enormous statement for the team, for the fans, for the competition. Instead, it solidifies a popular belief in the media and amongst opposition supporters that we don't win big games, that we can't take a big scalp. This game hurt so much because we were playing so well against the odds. We were 5 goals up in the last term and let them come back into the game. We basically led for the entire second half right up until after the final siren sounded. Would I have felt this way if they had beaten us by a couple of goals? This game hurt so much because we've already lost 3 games by under 10 points this season. Games we should have won. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. How many times have I heard or uttered that along the journey? This game hurt so much that I was unable to visit my online home for days after the loss. Perusing social media feeds was torture, so I either just scrolled and scrolled or simply did not open those very addictive time-wasting apps and attempted to enter the real world with my football mojo completely zapped. Usually a loss only has me drained for a short amount of time until I get sucked right back into it. But this game was different. This game hurt so much. Perhaps I am overreacting and this is just a game after all. Maybe it's hurting me so much because for the first time in a long time, I had started to allow myself to believe. Is it possible that we can repeat the fairy tale of 1987? Time will tell. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to a very sad edition of the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and my co-host tonight, Grapeviney. Good evening, Grapeviney.
G'day, Andy. How are you?
Well, I think you can tell how
Yes.
I am. And Super Mikado, how are you?
I'm as well as could be under the circumstances. Fortunately, I didn't turn off at the final siren on Saturday and then listen to your editorial there and get the bad news about what happened.
Well, am I overreacting? For me, that was as soul crushing as it gets. Particularly because a few minutes into the final quarter, I almost dislocated my shoulder in celebration, fist pumping the air. Am I overreacting?
I compared it not to the 87 preliminary final, but more so to the notorious Round 6 1992 clash against the Bombers, which Super Mikado, of course, knows the Chris Sullivan threshold, the Chris Sullivan
Correct.
line. 47 points early in the last quarter that day against Essendon, kicked 8 straight and beat us by a single point. So it was in that territory, wasn't it? Because I reckon after, I don't know, it was either 2 goals or 3 goals, I said, we are done here. And yet we did arrest the momentum a bit with sort of, 10 or 15 minutes to go. So, yeah, pretty devastating, wasn't it?
And I think the worst thing is that we did arrest the momentum. It wasn't like we copped 8 goals in a row in the last 10 minutes and lost, which admittedly we'd probably be equally hanging out a ledge if that had happened. But it was, we absorbed that, we got another goal to go 8 points in front, and we actually were threatening to withstand the barrage and still come out and win. And then what went from probably would have been one of the greatest wins of the post-premierships era, swung all the way around the other way to the point where it now brings down that great 2005 win where they missed after the siren in my memory. That I previously had that down as my favourite game of all time, but I don't quite see how I could possibly ever think of that without thinking of what happened this week as well. So I've sacked that as my favourite game of all time and replaced it with the 2000 final against Carlton.
So what went wrong? How did we give up that lead?
A lot's been said, and there's a million things you can analyse both at the end of the game and during the game, which sort of, as Goody said, the little things add up to the big things and they become the moments. But I actually think it just boils down to complacency, and I think when we got to 29 points, we took the foot off the pedal slightly. They got a couple, and then momentum, as we all know, is a very difficult thing to stop. But we needed 5 to 10 more minutes of high-pressure footy, lock them down, lock the ball down, and it would have been game over.
Yeah.
But I genuinely think they thought that perhaps they had it won.
And I think that the back line, without Hibberd being such a sort of home brand back line, did so well until that point to keep them to the score. We did keep them 2 to 3/4 time. But then when the ball started coming down there at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and obviously Hawkins was trailing Oscar around like he had him on a rope, that was obviously when the game turned, because they just kept getting those quick entries. He's leading, he's kicking the goals, and that's what did that big burst. I think once they put Frost into Hawkins, that was a much better option, as we saw at the end, where he sort of came through and spoiled or took the mark out of Hawkins's hands, a ball that probably would have 10 minutes earlier gone straight into Hawkins's hands for another shot on goal.
Yeah, most of the delivery to Hawkins though was unstoppable. Arguably, someone going back into the hole might have been able to get to it, but most of those passes were just laced out on the chest.
They weren't like that last one was more up, that you had the chance for Frost to do his speedy run in, whereas the other ones were just smashed straight down his throat. So we just needed to really keep the ball, after a couple of those, lock the ball away for a few minutes and calm things down. But we seemed to just keep going and just couldn't wrest the momentum back for another till basically the score was back to 2 points. And that's when we did get some of the momentum back. And Melksham kicked that helicoptery weird goal that should have given us the margin to hold on. But as we all know, I'm sure by now, no spoiler alert here, we sort of fell apart at the end. I tell you, the funny thing is that I was so emotionally crippled by this game that I literally thought that the goal came from the kick-in after the point. It was only the next day when I subjected myself to the review that I actually found out that it wasn't. Even though I'd been standing there watching it all in person, my brain just went totally, it cut out about a minute of the game. So I think if you can get a psychologist on to talk about sporting trauma at some point, then I'd be very much interested to know, is that, the light, soft Western country version of a PTSD, like people would get in war zones or something, the sporting version.
Well, you were at the game, were you not? I was reading some.
Never make that mistake again.
I was reading some tweets of yours. Was the fact that were you arguing with some people around you, and was that maybe reason why your memory isn't as solid as you
Well, suffice to say, when I saw the footage of the punch up later, it was where I had been standing in the first half. At half time, I had been engaging in some low blow personal sledging with a Geelong fan, who at some point also claimed he was a Bulldogs fan. It was a very weird scenario. I just couldn't help but throw in offensive comments to him. And at half time, the mate I was with, we just thought, let's go stand somewhere else and watch the game. But and I was surprised that the guy I was verbaling with wasn't in the footage of the punch up. But there was a whole row of our fans behind who were very lippy. Very much obviously I don't know what they do at home games, but it felt a bit like siege mentality. Turn it up to 11 when you're surrounded by the opposition and sort of get into them as much as possible. Then you had blokes like the one I was verbaling with who were absolutely pissed off their brain. Coming back in, you got 2 guys coming back in carrying 4 beers each time. Smashing the lot. They're spilling everywhere. It was a very tense. It was just, had no surprise at all when I saw that video of people punching on afterwards. I saw a couple of cops before the first bounce. Don't reckon I saw another cop all night. The security guards were, they were just people there to collect a wage. There was no actual interest in telling people to calm down or anything. Like at one point I was jostling with this character, this uneducated simpleton. And about 2 foot away, there was a security guard just standing there. And I would have thought, realistically, you would come over to myself, this person, and say, boys,
easy,
time to settle down. If not, settle down or we're going to kick you out, which is probably the next level up. But instead, the bloke's just standing there going, whatever, collecting his money. Look, I wasn't surprised at all. And I wouldn't have thought that might have been the one that was captured on video, but I wouldn't doubt that there would have been a few other corkers in the stands that night. So I have officially retired from attending Cardinia Park now. I saw the 1-point win in 2005, my ex-favourite game of all time, and I saw the win there a couple of years ago. And other than that, I've seen unimaginable trauma, and I sort of don't feel that paying good money to stand on a crappy concrete terrace surrounded by drunks who are looking for a fight, and it probably doesn't fit into my row philosophy of getting away from fans as much as possible, which is probably why I just can't help but react when someone's stupid, basically. I can't help but point that out to them. So it's definitely, it's back to the back row for me. And in future, Cardinia Park, even if they get rid of the standing in the future, that joint can do one. I'm not going back there again.
Now, having been to 186 and this, which is worse? Is there a correlation? Can you even... I
don't want to play this one down at all.
Yeah.
Because I tell you, I cracked the sads where I was. I was standing sort of second half right up towards, there's like a big corporate marquee above the back row of Cardinia Park, and there's sort of a chain link fence under it. And I kicked the bejesus out of that chain link fence, took it very badly. Then I kind of went into a shock for about 2 hours. This is how long it took me to get home. And then I was about halfway driving home, and I just felt like I was going to throw up. The tension just hit me and I had to pull over, and fortunately I didn't do that, but I really felt for a moment like I was going to be sick when it just really hit me what had happened. But at the same time, I would say 186 was worse, because we knew the team was a bit iffy that year. They were up, they were down. There was, at that point, some talk about the dodgy stuff that was going on, between the administrators and the players. But that point was sort of like, you've just wasted the last 5 years. Everything from 2007 round 1, where we went in thinking we were going to win the flag and the collapse started, to that moment, just wiped away that day. You just knew we're rooted. Back to square one, we're in trouble. Whereas now, I feel it, and I agree, I liken it very much to that 1992 game that has taught me never to trust last quarter leads. But that was round 6. So that wasn't as important. But this one is up there with the worst close losses I think I would say we've ever had. Just because it was the finals 8-pointer, it was deep in enemy territory, there was the big lead. It was really, something special that I wouldn't say I didn't think the Melbourne Football Club was capable of unloading on me, but something probably very unexpected. So I'm going to go for 186, but it's hard to think of many other games that rank alongside of this. I wasn't around for the 87 prelim. I came in 89. There's the round 6 92. There's the Ricky Pettard one against Collingwood. I went off at that one when he dropped the mark. Yeah. I went off my tree at that game. But again, it was a placeholder season. We didn't think anything was going to happen. No. The St Kilda game where we stuffed up the clock and lost it we won it and lost it in the last minute. Yeah. Again, that was horrible, but it was just a placeholder season. Whereas now, we're in the mix. We are still a chance. That was just so crucial to win that game, and to watch it coming from. I was obviously at the end where the goal was kicked. To watch the ball coming in that direction was like standing in a field and watching a cyclone coming towards you. You just knew what was going to happen. It was so obvious what was going to happen. And then when he marked it, I almost didn't watch. I did have a bit of a turn away when he was getting, and then I thought I better watch this, and didn't even look at the ball. I just looked at Zach Tui and I saw his reaction. I was like, "You're kidding, aren't you?"
If we can forget the result and the last quarter, definitely the parts where they found it very easy to score, is there positives to take away from the game?
Lots of positives. Lots.
I find it hard just because positives. Of the... Yeah, well, I'll ask you then, Grapevine. You want to give me some positives to get me out of my funk here?
Well, we did dominate for 3 and almost a half quarters. And like we did against Geelong the first time and like we did against Port, we bossed the game and were winning in a lot of areas. Didn't take full... didn't sort of get full bang for our buck out of that. Kicked 14-14 and had a lot of inside 50s that ended up nowhere, including sort of going wide. But the thing which I queried sort of at the end was they seemed to have a spare man in defence most of the night, so that Jesse, mainly Jesse, but also Tom were double teamed, and yet I don't know where our spare was, and we certainly didn't have a spare down back when the onslaught was happening. So that was sort of my main query out of the night. But yeah, I think that there were and are a lot of positives, and I'm still bullish about the rest of the season. And there's no reason why we can't win the required number of games to qualify for the September action.
Yeah, I think we find out this week.
Yeah.
If the lessons have been learned and if the signs are right, because you're 100% correct. We did so much right in that game. We dealt with Vince's house. We dealt with Dangerfield and Selwood pretty well.
Yep.
Harms did a great tagging job. Ablett, they all got on top in the last quarter, but who didn't on the Geelong team? I think that the back line actually held together really well until that onslaught. I was very worried when Hibberd went out, and I still am very worried because I'm not convinced there's really any playmakers in that defence now without Hibberd. But it all held up well. Again, yes, we were very wasteful going into the forward 50. Jesse was pretty much cut out of the game. But as long as we're continuing to make those chances, the weight of numbers says we're going to kick at least a reasonable score most weeks. So again, we continue to do that. That's got to be fixed come next year, if not right now. But I think forward, back, middle, we pretty much did well in all positions. We just lost the plot in that last quarter, 10 minutes of that last quarter even, and then 50 seconds at the end. That really, brings it down. But overall, I agree. I think that game, you should be bullish about that game. But the question is, do they go to Adelaide and play like they've learnt something from that game, especially if it's close? Or do they go there, lose, and effectively we just go rip, and that's the end of the season?
Yeah, I don't know. The Grapevine, you mentioned the double teaming and the loose man. This seems to be a staple of the games where we've lost. Teams have been doing that to us. Can we negate that?
Well, the AFL might fix it for us when they demand 6, 6 and 6, in which case everyone will be manned up to it. So,
how are they going to police that? That's going to be a disaster.
The whole thing's looking like a bit of a nightmare right at the moment. So, even the introduction and trialling of it, they're talking about trialling it in some inconsequential games in the last couple of rounds, and that just compromises the entire integrity of the competition.
That's not even bush league. Like even bush leagues wouldn't do that.
Exactly.
In my media ban, I've missed this. Are you saying that in games that obviously have no bearing on the
like St
finals,
Kilda, Gold Coast in round 22 or something, that they might play with these new rules? It's just incredible that you'd have...
And that's not even an anonymous leak. Like I've noticed the last 2 days there's been 2 different stories by age journos about wacky things that have been considered. So obviously they're just lining up at AFL House and getting their stories handed to them. But this was literally Gill himself.
Didn't we get...
Yeah.
The most chaotic figure since Donald Trump.
Didn't we get fined for experimenting in games?
Yes,
correct.
Allegedly.
There's been a lot of talk about a refund.
Some of the wacky things that they're putting out, that's just to get us to accept the less wacky things that are being proposed, I think. So
yep, I agree 100% with that. And I think the problem is their conspiracy is so ham-fisted that they've sort of passed the point where that will work, and now it's tilted over to the point where everyone knows what they're up to. So even when they do, like if they just come and said we're going to have the starting zones, 666, the number of the beast, like if they just said they were going to have that, we would have all punched on, we would have complained about it, and then we would have just gone, whatever, and got on with it. Now it's got to the point where everyone knows what they're up to, and everyone's like on edge thinking, all right, this is just going to be the start. They've totally botched this, the AFL. They've lost all credibility. They've spent a whole season basically talking their own game down. So I hope the benefits they get from the ratings, the crowds, Channel 7 executives patting them on the head, I hope that's going to be worth it, because this season is effectively telling you you're an idiot for watching it, which is just a remarkable attitude for the competition to have.
Just talking about, we spoke about the defence before, and there's a bit of talk about it in the chat room. 8 goals to three-quarter time was a superb effort. 3 of those 8 goals, one of them came from the Dangerfield ruck infringement. Another one came from the Harms 50-metre penalty. And a third one came from Jordan Lewis kicking into the man on the mark, which is a pet hate of mine, on the wing, and the ball quickly went back down the other way, and they goaled from that. So, the criticism of the back line and some of the hysterical commentary online, about Oscar McDonald should never be picked for the team again is exactly that. It's hysterical. Just crazy talk.
Well, when they say that, who are they going to bring in? Like, we've got people knocking down the door. But those two...
Cameron Pedersen is being in the middle of a conversion into a defender, so...
Well, I think he's there
as a 32 years old.
A JIC. That's I think in terms of if one of the our big men go down with an injury, I think that's what that's there for. Grapeviner, you mentioned 2 things: the Dangerfield ruck infringement. What did you guys think of that? So that was when...
the rule is terrible. It was applied correctly.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Forget whether the rule's terrible for a moment. He did put his hand up for it. Obviously, Angus didn't hear it, but the free was
Obviously,
there.
no one heard it.
Yeah.
And they, it hurts even more to watch Dangerfield and Selwood congratulating themselves after it, because everyone knows that they've duped the umpire, and all the media commentary that's followed has all admitted that, and they've all demanded, and the expectation is that rule will be tweaked at the end of the year.
Now, they put this rule in to stop the third man up. Now, why do that? Why not just have the ruck, and if a third man goes up, you pay the free kick?
There's a free kick, exactly.
That stops it. I don't know, maybe that's too logical for the AFL.
It is. It is.
The other one that I absolutely hate is the one that Harms got pinged for. He could not have gone anywhere except done a immediate 180 and run the other way, and even then he might have been deemed too
the
close.
Umpires expect you to defy the laws of nature and physics,
the magic bullet,
and just immediately appear elsewhere on the ground.
Yeah, like people have teleportation. It's ridiculous.
And is that really, like, we talk about the quality of the game and everything, like, is that really what we want? These pissy little administrative free kicks, from a bloody rule book that's more complicated than flying a jumbo jet. It's like when people a few years ago when they had the interchange infringements. When was the last time anyone got done for an interchange infringement? They're probably doing exactly the same thing they were 5 years ago. And then you just out of nowhere get blokes being marched 50 metres from where the ball is to just kick a free goal because someone forgot to fill in the correct paperwork in triplicate. It's just ridiculous. Like, there's a lot of this talk this week saying, why don't we have less rules more than more? And I tend to agree with that.
I mean, he had his arms up in surrender before, while he's running, saying, I'm not getting in the way, I'm not getting in the way.
There was a Sydney one a couple of weeks ago, and it was almost identical to that. I can't remember who the Sydney player was, but he was running back with the player, and again they copped the 50, and
like he was running to get out of his way, and
fancy being an umpire and having
travesty.
to work all that out. Is he running north, south, or east, west, or what bollocks? Like, we give it to the umpires, but the what they get to work with is just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
With the deliberately rushed behinds and the deliberate out on the fulls where it's not like you turn around and kick it out. That's deliberate. Now it's if you didn't try and keep it in enough, and the acting football league, you have to pretend you were trying to keep it in.
Yeah,
just pretend that you're getting it out of a pack. Move your hand furiously so it looks like you're trying to handball.
Like the holding the ball when you're being tackled, and you've got to just fake. And when you're running back to goal and you have to just accidentally, whoops, sorry, I was trying to pick it up and I accidentally kicked it through for a point. It's just ridiculous. These, little administrative free kicks, they're doing nothing for the game. Except, maybe a coach or something's rung up at some point and complained because they've had one player who's gone to run off the line and someone's been going past, and then they go and make all these changes to compensate for it. It's just unnecessary complication, but I think unnecessary complication is what's written above the door at AFL House these days in Latin.
If you would like to join us on the show, we love hearing from fellow Demonlanders or anyone listening to us now. 0390163666. That's 0390163666. Or Skype us on Demonland31. We love hearing from you guys. You can join us in the chat room if you're listening. Demonland.com/podcast. We've got about 100 people listening live at the moment, so jump in and say g'day or ask a question. We're here as unlicensed psychiatrists tonight. Try and get you through the week.
How good was some of Clary's hand passes?
I was just going to mention Clary.
Almost next level, even for Clary.
The handball over his head to JKH
Kennedy Harris,
was absolutely deliberate. I don't think JKH was even calling for it. He just knew he was there.
Extraordinary stuff, isn't it?
And that resulted in a goal, I believe.
Tom McDonald.
Yeah, it was... beautiful to watch, and he had 40 possessions. I think it was possibly one of his best games ever. 40 possessions, 20 contested. Just
also
considering the opposition.
Yes. Sorry, Grapevine, what'd you say?
No, I agree. I thought it was one of his best games, and that's saying something because he's had plenty of doozies.
Yes.
He's just got a sixth sense for where people are going to be. Like you said, even if they don't know they're where he wants to handball to them. He can just in the split second know where to put the ball, and that's such an important asset. Rather than people who sort of pick it up and have to think about it for 5 seconds before they know what they're going to do with it. He just goes whack, gets it out, and as we saw against the Bulldogs, especially, the kicks aren't bad either.
Yeah, and there's been a few times this year that his handballs have just been too good for us, and not in the way that sometimes. We get a bit too cute. Not in that sense. It's totally all. It's deliberate. He's amazing, and I'm so glad we've got him.
He's had a few over the years for the umpires that were too quick for them as well. He's been pinged for a throw because the hands were just so quick, sort of over the back of the head or something.
Maxi, do you think there was something up with him? He just wasn't at the Maxi best.
Well, reportedly he was crook. I've seen online.
Well, we know that he was crook because
we know that he was crook. Yes.
He didn't come. I thought he had a head cold. That's what I was told. We had a player sponsor night, and Max couldn't attend. But I read online that he might have had gastro. Yeah, that's not fun, and perhaps. Still feeling.
And there might have been a few other players a bit crook too. No need to name names, but I think it might have been going around perhaps.
This happened before the function, so they can't be blamed.
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
Maxi. Angus Brayshaw, we did have some good news this week, today. with Angus re-signing until 2022. We've got another 4 years. Didn't he? He's had a great year this year, and that's certainly probably
he's
bumped up his
poll well
price.
in the B&F, isn't he, at the end of the year?
Yeah, he's up there in our Demonland one. He's now coming fourth. He's overtaken Nathan Jones. It's a 2-horse race basically with Max and Clayton, and then Jesse behind them, who hasn't didn't poll this week, but Bradshaw is hot on the heels. But I don't know if he can catch with only 5 weeks to go. But yeah, he's had a great year.
Have either of you watched the last quarter again? Or watched the replay of the game? Because I've got a question that I need answered.
Only the last 2 minutes.
Well, not crazy.
Because I remember in the last quarter there was a high ball kicked in our forward 50 and Garlett was the closest to it, but he didn't compete for it. And he let it bounce and he could have made the mark. And did that happen or am I dreaming that?
I don't know. I've already had a psychological trauma reaction to the game where I thought something happened when it didn't, so I can't comment on that. I did see Bernie flinging in for the spoil on Melksham in the last minute.
That didn't help either.
There was also one point where Bernie, there was a ball came into the Geelong forward line and he just jumped through without even trying to contest it. If a Geelong player, he braced and just jumped through the pack. If a Geelong player had just mysteriously run past him at that point, I dare say he would have been adding to his already substantial rap sheet of reports and suspensions for the club.
Now, along with my self-imposed social media, anything to do with the game ban this week, I am unaware of whether Tom Hawkins was cited or got any repercussions for the thumping of Bailey Fritsch's. Was he seriously let off?
Yep.
Insufficient force.
What? He was nearly dead. He was nearly dead.
It was a fair whack.
It was.
I don't know how it's insufficient force.
Is that different to a jumper punch?
Like it would have hurt.
How different is that to the jumper punch that they're cracking down on? That looks worse than a jumper punch. And
look what happened on the terraces half an hour later.
Exactly.
So he should have been
monkey see, monkey do.
Justice just for that.
Yeah, not good, not a good look, and I can't believe he got off for that.
No, it was definitely Tom's night.
Oh yeah.
Now I did some research during the week because I thought, gee, surely Tom Hawkins just wrecks us every time. Now I looked up his career stats. He has kicked against us 46 goals, 9.
In how many games?
Yeah, 46 goals, 8, sorry.
Oh, he's got a good conversion record, yeah.
Correct. Every other team, he's kicked, 20 points and stuff against. But against us, he's not only kicked the most goals in his career against any team,
wow. He
has also been ridiculously accurate. Right back to his second career game where he kicked 4 against us. It's not a Kent Kingsley club job because he's obviously done plenty of else in his career. But, gee, it's insulting when you've just got players who just do that to you. So we've played against him 14 times for 46 goals.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Brisbane have played against him 14 times for 43 goals, 21. So he's had more shots against Brisbane. And then he's had 39 goals in 20 starts against Hawthorn. So it's just taking a piss. He's even had his career most rebound 50s against us. He's had 2. That's the most he's had against any team.
Well, Bin Man made the very valid point in the chat room earlier that in the last quarter we had an even number of shots a goal. It was 8 straight to 3 goals 5. Yeah. And I think it was even number of inside 50s, wasn't it? We might have even had a couple more, I think, on the last quarter.
Yeah, and look, if any of those, I mean, one of them was converted from a point to an out on the full, which sliding doors, Gwyneth Paltrow moment, nothing would have been the same. Had that actually been a point, we probably would have lost in a different heartbreaking circumstance. But yeah, any of those that had missed in the middle of that massacre, and it was exactly like the Bulldogs the week before. I stood there and actually said to my mate, I said, now I know how Bulldogs fans felt, because it was just an unstoppable wave where we just needed to catch just a rest for 30 seconds, and we might have been able to get out of it a lot quicker than we did, but it was just unstoppable. So, what can you do? You got Hawkins pushing Gawn off and snapping goals from boundary throw-ins. It was just the perfect storm. But we still had it in our hands with a minute to go.
Well, that's happened before.
And just, can I say one thing? JKH has copped a lot of grief for his pretty simple miss in the dying minutes that would have sealed it. But look at some of the shots earlier in the night. Nibbler had almost an identical snap in the second quarter.
He should have kicked
same
that.
end of the ground. He should have put that one through. And Nibbler really lacks composure around goals.
He had a lot more time.
Which is a big shame because a lot of other areas of his game are coming together, but on the run, he's almost a certainty to miss it around goals, unfortunately. And, of course, Tommy Mack missed an absolute sitter at the start of the game. So, he's got similar numbers over his career probably to what Hawkins has got against Melbourne.
What do you guys reckon? I know Petrarca has been held up as doing the wrong thing. Watching those last 2 minutes again, I could see, when I paused it, I could see a couple of players that he had options for, but it didn't actually turn out too badly. Like going out of bounds there, we could still have come out of that
locked
okay.
it up. Yeah.
Obviously, you got Gawn goes off, and I just saw in the chat room the mention by MS Phoebe about Tom McDonald telling the umpire that Max was bleeding. So that's interesting. I don't know why he would have done that. And
why would he do
that? It was a pretty quick contact to being ordered off, which he then. What I found odd as well, he really took his time going off. Now, did he mean to do that? Was that a tactical thing to say, for some reason, I'm going to take my time so we can set up or whatever it was? Or did he just, had he run out of gas? Are the conspiracy theories correct? Or he obviously wasn't running for the toilet.
No, I thought at the time that, he's jogging off as slowly as he can to get them to readjust and set up again.
Whereas I'm having such a nervous breakdown at that point. I'm like, get off, just get it. I just wanted the game to get on with. I wanted it just to end one way or the other and just get on with it. And so, again, sliding doors, if he hadn't taken so long to go off, then something else would have happened. And again, we might have lost, but it probably wouldn't have ended up with a bloke kicking a goal after the siren.
Reliving this is
and then
making me
there's
cry
Scarlett's
again.
shot as well, which, again, I don't know without access to seeing the vision and giving the guy a break that he just picked the ball up. I don't know if he had another option. As it says in the chat room, we'd be lambasting him for deliberate out of bounds if he didn't take a shot. Whether, in retrospect, you want to just run around for a bit or go backwards or get tackled over the line or something like that. If he'd kicked it, he'd be a legend. If Tommy Mack hadn't been double teamed when the ball landed in the goal square, if it had gone out of bounds again, we would have been a lot better off. There's just so many. It's like when you watch Air Crash Investigation and they're like, well, this wouldn't have brought the plane down, but this happened, and these 27 different things happened that all contributed to the plane flying into a mountain. It was like that. There wasn't one particular moment that we lost it. We just had so many things go against us, which it would, if I wasn't a Melbourne fan, if I was watching it from a neutral perspective, I'd say that's a good sign for the future, that once 25 of those things are corrected, we don't lose that game. But I'm also cynical due to experience.
Now, what did you think at the end of this has been talked about a fair bit, the Bernie Vince at the end of the game. And now it's been explained, Bernie Vince on TV was seen smiling, and I don't know if he was laughing with Dangerfield, and some people were angry with that, some of the people in the media, but it's been since explained that he was just talking to his old mate Dangerfield, and Dangerfield was asking about his dad, and he said something nice to him and whatever. So he's been
overreaction.
Yeah, I mean, no one likes to see players being want to. You don't want to see your team.
You don't want to see Jack Watts laughing his head off, as he used to do
after a loss.
No, but they showed, and just to counter that whole thing with Bernie, there's actually another picture they showed, which is when the kick's going through of Bernie, and he's on his he's on his haunches, and his head's in his hands, and that's the way he was feeling. He was devastated like the rest of the team.
Yeah.
So no biggie.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where if I'd probably seen it live, if I'd been watching on television and hadn't kicked my setting,
it infuriates you.
I probably would have gotten emotional about it. But having not actually seen it and come to it later, you sort of think, whatever. Like, I don't understand why they can't meet up and chit chat off field, but yeah, you can't question a commitment of a guy who's just gone out there and smashed into it for 120 minutes. Just because he lets rip a loose smile doesn't mean anything particular. The last person I remember copping it for the smile was Colin Sylvia when we lost by about 110 points in Sydney a few years ago. I remember there was mass outbursts of devastation that he was seen having a bit of a smile after the game. So I don't know if it's more of a crime to smile after a goal after the siren than it is after a 110-point loss.
No, there's been a few Jack Watts incidents since the Sylvia days, and most of the anger directed to Watts came from the fact that he'd given that interview fairly early on in his career where he said losing doesn't bother him that much, or he can get over losing quite quickly, and then to combine that with a smile after a loss. Really got people's backs up,
and the natural desire to beat Jack Watts with a baseball bat at every opportunity that a lot of people seem to have over the years. It was kind of like my mate who has been absolutely anti-Buckley to the max, to the point where now he's so conflicted whether he still wants Collingwood to win or not because his point has been proven wrong. That I think there was a lot of people like that with Watts as well, that they wanted us to do well, but they were kind of also hoping that we could do well without him so that we could, still hang shit on him.
If anyone
Sorry for that surprise return to Jack Watts chat after 6 months later.
How is Jack Watts doing? No, we don't have to answer that.
Not as well as Bailey Fritsch.
No, well, I love Bailey Fritsch. I don't know if I say it enough on this podcast. I do love you, Bailey. If you would like to join us on the show, 0390163666 or Demonland31 on Skype, we'd love to hear from you. Could be helpful in the healing process. Anything else from that?
7-second delay lined up just in case somebody defames somebody.
I can always delete it from the on their version. Anyone else want to talk about anything else from the game before we move on? I'm happy to talk about. I don't have anything on any other players I want to talk about, but you guys, anyone else?
Just to mention Harms, which we did briefly, probably the best game of his career. Did a super job on Selwood in the first half, and then just casually switched over to Danger after half time. So that's awesome, isn't it?
It is. We can talk injury list now. Well, we're going to talk about Casey soon, but may as well bring up the injury list. He broke his hand. Did this happen in the game?
It was a kicking in danger incident that we didn't get a free for typically.
No, and we don't.
And I believe it was Danger himself doing the kicking in danger.
So there was a danger one. I'm just going to roll the footnote. There's no audio. There is a danger one where he slid in on Lewis. Lewis went for a low ball on the ground. And I can see on this tweet where it was posted, it was when we were up 96-94. It's one of the most ridiculous slide tackles you'll ever see. You'd get a card for it in soccer, let alone a free kick against an AFL, and it went totally unpunished. I'll put the link in the chat room, but it's a bit ironic that after certain people, including myself, have hung it on Lewis for not doing enough defensive stuff, he goes down to pick up a loose ball in a contested situation in a close game and gets put through by a bloke sliding in studs up is absolutely ridiculous. And now to hear that Harm's got an injury from a kicking in danger as well, we can't even do the rules that we've got at the moment. Let's not bring any more in.
Hells Bells in the chat room says 3 of the 4 last games versus the Cats, we've had more scoring shots and have still lost. When will this nightmare end against the Cats?
When we play them in week 1 of the finals and absolutely pump them.
Well, that could be the return to 05. We got into the finals. The first of the 3 weeks of glory was the 1-point win, round 20. And then 3 weeks later, we played them in the elimination final, and they beat us by about 10 goals. So if that happens, I will re-put that game back into number 1 on my all-time favourites.
So, injury list, Harmsy had surgery on his hand, but they seem to be quite confident that he's going to play, and they'll wait until the very last minute.
Oliver played the week after surgery, didn't he?
Oh yeah, that's true. He did. So there is some form with that type of injury.
It's a good way to avoid being typecast as a tagger for the rest of your career after a week and a half doing it in a row. You might be like, I'll just have a week off, boys, just so I don't get roped into doing that every week, because the first time where he plays someone and they wreck him, he'll probably be dropped to Casey.
Well, I see that Sloan is back this week, so if he is playing, you'd think he's going to get that job. MS Phoebe in the chat room says, Hibbard said last week he'd be 1 to 2 weeks. Goodwin says today he's still a few weeks away, so that's not the best of news.
Well, few, and Goodwin might not have been precise with his language, but few is only, that can be as low as 3, so it's only 1 more week. So
he's a few weeks away, so that could be a few further weeks from now.
Did anyone have a heart attack today when they saw the news that Clary pulled up at training? I don't know if he was clutching his quad. They're saying that it's not too bad and he will likely play, but is there question marks on the surface of Gosh's paddock?
We've had a pretty good run. Until now, apart from the mysterious toe injuries in the pre-season.
But that's exactly the problem. Those toe and foot injuries are now spreading up the leg and infecting the rest of the body. So
it's like a flesh-eating virus.
So Hells Bells in the chat room says in Misson's report he mentioned that Harms is less likely than likely to play this week.
Great. So that's
There's
That's
a tagger.
another midfielder we need to find.
Yeah. Hibbert and Viney are aiming for the Swans game. That's good news.
I think Hibbert is just really important. Like he's not in his All-Australian form this year, but he's so important to that back line. I actually really liked Joel Smith the other night in the contest. Again, I think I said this a few weeks ago when I was on. I won't vouch for him for positioning, for tactics. That's for others to decide. But I think in the one-on-one contest, he's been very good, and he was very good the other night as well. So it's not a completely dire situation, but again, what's going to happen when we play West Coast with Kennedy and Darling? Apart from everyone saying Lucas Cook 15 times in the game when Darling's kicking goals. I fear what the likes of them are going to do to us. It's probably lucky that we're factoring that in as a loss, even if we are going to make the finals.
The other piece of encouraging news is that Hunt was back to full training, I believe, today. So that's good news. Hells Bells says is a chance to return. I don't think they'd play him straight in.
No, and he'll be ready on the weekend that Casey have their bye, which is good news, of course, typically.
Yeah.
And as has been pointed out, you have a bye every second week in the VFL, so there's nothing unusual about that.
Do they have a week off for a state game this year? That's always a highlight when all the AFL reserves teams have to stop so that some bloke from Port Melbourne can play some bloke from the Waffle.
Yeah, because it's the AFL listed players. They don't play in those games, do they? No.
And to be fair, we probably don't want them to.
No.
But just stops the whole competition dead. It's almost like they need to play, get some of the. I suppose you're not going to have enough players to play scratch matches in those weeks between the AFL dominated teams. The reserves.
Super Mikado, did you get to watch the Casey? Was the Casey game played? It was on the same oval.
Yeah, it was before, but no, I was. I took a long and tortuous route to get to Cardinia Park from home, so I didn't see it at all. I've just seen the stats from it. Not sure there's
much to take
too much for us from that one. Obviously, I see Wiedemann did well again, but I'm just not sure at the moment where he would fit in that forward line.
Did you see the tackle stats?
Someone at Vandenberg, someone had about 19 or something.
Vandenberg had 17, Bug had 15, and Kent had 14. Now, two things you can read into that. It's great that they're tackling and they're showing that defensive part, but if they're doing a lot of tackles, does that mean that they weren't first to the ball?
Well, it's so strange. It's like it's like there was pouring down rain or something. The score and the numbers of tackles. Very like strange scoring game.
Sounded like a cracker of a match. We came from behind with 5 last quarter, sort of the opposite of the seniors game. But yeah, it was good to see them get their 10th win on the trot. They're playing some good footy.
Do we steal all their players?
Is Vanders a chance? Would you bring him in?
I think Goodwin said he still needs a few weeks.
Yeah.
So no.
But I think, in a couple of weeks, it could be an option. I think we're probably starting to run out of options in the twos, which is a testament to Casey actually still winning and still against a very, very good team on the weekend, coming from behind to win a 10th in a row.
Yeah, pretty good for Casey. Any other changes that you can see this week? If Harms is out, who comes in as a replacement?
I'm going to have Bug, which is always controversial, but I remember that the tag job he did on Steel Side Bottom on Queen's birthday a couple of years ago. He did a really good tagging job on him. Side Bottom had killed us in the first quarter, and he went on to him and just had about one touch in the second quarter. So if it's like for like, and I'm not sure who else is really going to be used. I mean, hopefully we don't use Jones as the tagger again, because we all saw how well that went earlier in the year when they tried it. So I'll probably have Bug and then Hannon for Kennedy Harris.
Yeah. Did Hannon play this week, or was he out with that knee injury?
Didn't play, no.
Didn't play.
He was the mystery injury of the week, if I recall.
Right.
That's
me being ignorant. I thought he must have been the holdover emergency.
No, I think that might have been
jarred knee, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a jarred knee that we only found out at selection.
It's always the way.
I think maybe Wagner might have been the holdover.
Right.
The listed Wagner. Because I see that the Corey Wagner is getting the best each week or thereabouts.
Sort of an odd holdover, but really, because wouldn't you? I don't know. You sort of need a more versatile player to cover whoever goes out. But I guess the chances of someone actually going out at that late time probably only happens once or twice a year across the competition.
Yeah, I guess if someone is under a cloud, then they might put someone in more.
If they know a particular player is in trouble. I definitely still want to have a look at Baker.
Yeah,
at some point.
20 disposals this week.
Yep, I did. I just don't know if this is the right time. Probably the same with Kilty. He's been in the bests a lot.
Yeah,
and we probably could do with another defender. But again, is it the right time to be blooding players, or do we just stick with what we know, at least for now, and see what happens this week, and maybe roll out the first gamers in a couple of weeks' time if it's all shot?
Well, are we allowed to experiment at the end of the year now? Is that
if we can get ourselves out of finals calculations, then we can pretty much do what we like. Paul Johnson at full back and Matthew Warnock at full forward. It's all legal again.
Yes. Speaking of taking ourselves out of finals contention, what's our run home like? What's your ladder predictors? Spanners in the works, obviously, this week.
Northwest Coast is so crucial this week. I reckon GWS are probably going to be past us going to the last round, which is not to say that we can't win, but I reckon they'll already pretty much have qualified for the finals.
Yeah.
So I'm reckon it's us versus North now. There is some in Geelong. I've got Geelong, Port, North as 6, 7, 8, all a game ahead of us, but with us having a substantial percentage advantage over all of them. So that North West Coast this week is so crucial. It's flashback to a North Sydney game a couple of years ago when we were just holding on at the end of 2016. We desperately needed North to lose to give us the chance to beat Carlton the next day. And Sydney did win that. It just reminds me of that back in Hobart, needing the opposition team to win. But I'm not entirely confident in West Coast doing that.
I'm just now doing a lazy ladder prediction thing. I think also what could be, I'm hoping that Brisbane can knock North off as well.
Yeah.
Entirely plausible, that one.
Yeah.
Brisbane are now playing some decent footy.
Geelong Hawthorn game that could be one of those ones where it might bring Geelong down, but it might put Hawthorn back in the mix. But I think I would rather have more teams in the mix to get in order to get more teams to have a chance to fall out, just so the combinations can hopefully work in our favour, especially knowing that last round, Sydney Hawthorn is pretty much the only game of the last round that's going to affect us that is even anywhere near a 50-50 game. Everyone else who's a contender around us plays absolute junk. Carlton, Adelaide, Geelong, Gold Coast, St Kilda North, and Freo Collingwood, but I don't think that will be an issue. Port Essendon at home, if Port gets dragged down into the mire as well, that's probably becoming more relevant now. If Port was to lose this week to the Bulldogs, which is unlikely, but you never know, that will become a super relevant last round game as well. But basically, if we don't win this game, then I'm not factoring in any of this. I might suspend the Bradbury plan for the rest of the year.
What about needing 14 games to win? Is that...
no, 13 will do it.
Do you see that?
13 will do it.
Yeah, I mean, in my ladder predictor, I've got 14, but that's everything going as you would expect it to go, which it won't. So I'm hoping that it's Port, North, Geelong that are the ones that start dropping the games, because it's now really, as long as we win this, if we win this, Adelaide are dead and buried. It'll be down to GWS, Geelong, Port, North, Melbourne, Hawthorn, with only 2 of those teams missing out.
Where do you have Sydney? Because I'm doing a ladder predictor now, and I'm having.
We're going to beat Sydney in 3 weeks' time.
I'm having them missing out on finals.
Yep.
Jesus, that's keen. Well, I've got them 3rd, so
okay. I must have
that's the wide world of the ladder predictor. No, it's not to say that I'm not suggesting that I have a scientific scenario that's come up with that. That's just all done on the vibe. As long as yes, they have got a difficult run home. They've got Essendon, which they should win, but then they've got Collingwood, us. Obviously, switch that game around. That becomes very important. GWS, switch that around. It becomes very important. And then they've got Hawthorn in the last round. So, yeah, not easy, but I think they've got enough in the bank to certainly at least make it. And if they just make it and they knock us out, I'll feel like a real goose for punting them home against North.
I did a ladder predictor based on us winning the next 3 games. Oh, wow. I had missed one game, and that just put us out of the final. So I've done a ladder predictor with us winning the next 3 games and losing the last 2, and missing out on the finals on 13 wins.
It's plausible.
Yeah, it's quite plausible that happens.
And that would be, if we win 13 games and miss the finals...
Yeah, we'll have a percentage of 120 or something.
Correct.
At least 120.
Yeah.
And now they've even got the bottom teams have started to win games, Carlton accepted. It's just inconceivable how we could end up with that sort of a logjam in the middle of a ladder, and it would be so typical that we're the ones who get screwed by it.
Yeah.
Like, forget your Richmond ninth cliches. They're retired. If we finish ninth again, where you can't say ninthman anymore, it's something to do with us. We're the new 9.
We'll be having a competition how you can incorporate 9 into the word Melbourne. Best.
You can write it quite easily because you've got NE at the end. But saying it, I'm not sure how that'll work.
Nineborn.
Nineborn. I can just see the memes now. All right. Anything else you boys want to talk about? Anything? What else has happened in the Demonland world? Congratulations to two people. I think Dom Tyson, if he gets a game this week, brings up his 100 games.
Yep.
And Jordan Lewis with the 300. How many has he played for the D's?
30, early 30s, I reckon.
Can we claim anything in this? Do we?
I say well done for starting your career at a competent football club that delivered you great riches.
Do we have him in a Hawthorn jumper on the banner?
I'll tell you, there was it's 35 games he's played for us. There was the Melksham one went very heavy on his 150 games, 150 great games, 150 awesome games, and it's like, come on, it's like 150, about 120 games that we didn't give a rat's about, and 30 ones that we did.
You've got to give, they play for us now. They've played a lot of games. I think you've got to give them the kudos for that.
Imagine if the banner just said, Jake Melksham, 35, and just counted the games that he played for us.
35 great games.
That'd be a scandalous moment in the history of banner making.
Well, I noticed when Frawley, how many games would he have played? Had a milestone? Would it have been 100, 150?
For us?
No. Well, for Hawthorn just a couple of weeks ago. He
probably would have been 200, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Whatever it was, the Melbourne boys on the Hawthorn website on their Facebook page had Hawthorn put up a video that a few of the Melbourne guys still at our club had sent their wishes to, a couple of funny anecdotes and all that. So I'm just wondering if the Hawthorn players will return the favour for Jordan this week.
At least they can talk about the good times, whereas our boys, what were their funny stories? Like, I stood next to him and the 36th goal went through.
It was hijinks.
Then next thing you know, he was playing at full forward and Jordan McMahon was kicking a goal. Gee, it was funny.
I think it was all end-of-season trips, hijinks discussion.
I see. Well, in that case, there was probably stuff they couldn't broadcast.
So that's a couple of milestones coming up this week. I
might break things in my house if we lose another thriller. That will be a milestone. I might set a new record for property damage in relation to a Melbourne Football Club game.
It's a tough interstate trip. I don't think they're going to roll over like they did in the Alice.
No.
They have a couple of players in that didn't play then. Not going to be an easy game.
We do have a reasonable record at the Adelaide Oval. That's probably one thing that keeps me afloat going to this, and the fact that I just think we're a better team anyway. But I'm just desperate to know how we're going to react to losing a game like that. Are they going to? Pretty much the only team we've really killed off in the first quarter this year, correct me if I'm wrong, was Adelaide. Killed off and stayed killed off, because we've had a couple of, I think Brisbane, we killed them off early and then they launched the comeback. But Adelaide's the only team we've really put away for good in the first quarter. I would be absolutely shattered if we don't come out in that first quarter with breathing fire. But then again, we did that against Port and look where it got us. because we didn't convert the chances.
Well, that's what it's got to come down to. We've got to start converting chances. I think it's killed us in a number of games this year. And until we can do that, and it's got to come sometime, but we're running out of opportunities because every game is counting now.
Yeah, there's probably, like how many more can you get? Yeah, we got, what did we score? 94 and lost on the weekend. You're not going to kick 120, 130 points a week. So it's probably only 4 more opportunities that we're going to convert from all these inside 50s on a normal week. But it's just so crucial, especially when we can get an advantage out of the middle as well. Like the Bulldogs game where it just goes, and like Geelong against us in the last quarter, where it just goes bounce, goal, bounce, goal. You can really give it to a team in rapid fashion.
Yeah. Okay. Super Mikado, you want to plug your stuff?
Yeah, well, if you'd like to relive the game in torturous detail, you can visit demonblog.com. You can catch me on Twitter @demonblog and demonwiki.org, the home of all your Melbourne random stats, including one I got from the club during the week that someone had sent to them asking them to change it about the parentage of a player.
Oh, that sounds
who was not
saucy.
in that fashion. Not a Tom Kavanagh father-son with a completely different surname to his dad style controversial parentage scenario. But no, it was just an update on something on one of the pages. So that was very nice of the club to pass that on to me. That's happened a few times where people have missed the massive disclaimer on the front saying, send an email to this address if you want to change anything. And they've just gone directly to the club instead.
That's interesting. What was I going to say in terms? Oh, yes, you. I noticed you changed the name of. Did you change the name of your blog or?
I did.
Yes.
I'm going to change it officially on the blog soon. The old "Every Day is Like Sunday" Morrissey reference, which was in 2005, it was related to the fact that we used to play almost every game on a Sunday.
I was going to ask you if that was the reason.
And now it makes no sense whatsoever. So I've decided to just drop that and just rebrand as demonblog.com to get some more spectacle. It's my version of changing the rules.
Every day is like a Saturday night because it seems we're playing...
Correct. It makes no sense these days, and it has made no sense for about 10 years. But I just have to work out how to edit the banner on the website.
Well, if you need some help with that,
I just need that. I need the guy with the fork in the toaster because that's the classic photo that is also my background on my phone, which always baffles people. And the other guy...
Yeah, who's the other? It must be the computer.
The sort of the loopy guy on his computer, which he's got the Hankook logo. I think I stole that off like Big Footy or something, so God knows who actually made it. But he's got a Hankook sponsorship on, so it must be from about 2008. But yeah, I'll have to edit that. But yes, we have rebranded, and unlike an AFL change, the fans have been completely disinterested.
So you could have done "Every day is not like a Friday night" because we never get to play that.
Every day is like any other day, but well, we hope next year. Friday. The last couple of years, Friday night games have had absolutely no attraction to me because I finished work extremely early. So I remember that Sydney game last year. I hung around the city for about 5 hours before that game. But I understand for the sake of advertising and sponsorship and stuff like that, you definitely want to be on Friday night. So I certainly hope that next year the AFL recognises that, A, we're pretty much the highest scoring team in the competition, and B, twice within the last 6 or 7 weeks we've lost games and almost kicked 100 points.
Well,
so we're propping up entertainment value in this league for everybody.
I've got a theory. If we are more likely to get a lot of Friday night games if we actually miss the finals this year, considering they like to play teams that don't make the finals on a Friday night. So yes, we might get some Friday night games.
We might get St Kilda, Carlton, the Bulldogs, some real blockbusters.
Yeah.
Of a Friday night. While we're getting into conspiracy theories. Can I give you one that I came up with on the blog this week?
Yeah, go for it.
2 weeks after coming back from Darwin, we
Yep.
have never won a last quarter.
Mm,
Ponder that.
interesting.
2 weeks we have never lost. We've kicked an average of 1.8 goals per game across those fourth quarters.
Interesting.
So that's all I'm saying. Darwin was off the hook last week, but I'm just saying that there might be something in everyone gets through the first week and we all think, you beauty, they've survived Darwin, and then it hits in the last quarter 2 weeks ago. The game last year was the North one where we should have run over them in the last quarter, and we lost.
Was it Freo played us in Darwin? They won the next week.
Yep.
But then they lost this week, and
after a hot start.
Yeah, that's right. So what happened in the last quarter there? I think they fade out as well.
Folded like a house of cards in the second half.
There you go. So there may be something to this. Let's table it. See what happens.
Let's call an AGM.
In the third week, yes. Just by the way, my Demon Wiki random image is Jack Watts. Conspiracy
that's
theories
ironic.
abound. Great Viney, are you still with us?
I am, yes. Yep.
All right. Anything else, boys? Anything random you want to talk about?
I've got Dean Bailey looking sideways at James McDonald in a way that suggests I'm going to delist you.
I've got Kevin Dyson, 1995.
95, big hair.
Sorry?
Is he sort of got is the front of his hair like really high at that point?
Yes. Yep. Yep. It's sort of classic.
I remember at 96 I was in the Sooks with footy at that point, as we've previously discussed. I'm very upset that I didn't go and punch on at Dallas Brooks Hall over the merger. But I remember watching that grand final and going for Sydney literally just because of Kevin Dyson.
We were talking about the Dallas Brooks Hall. Great Viney, I don't think you were on that podcast that week. Did you come with me to Dallas Brooks Hall?
No, I was covering... I actually had to cover Joseph Gutnick that night for a newspaper.
Okay.
So I was on reporting duties. So I was there, and it was bedlam that night.
Yeah, it was. All right. Well, boys, another episode in the can.
Keep the faith.
Greater things, yes, I agree. I'm trying extremely hard not to get sucked into the death vortex of Melbourne supporter depression syndrome this week.
I'm well in it. You got to crawl me out.
I don't blame you, but I guess from my perspective, like I heard in your comments at the start that you allowed yourself to believe.
Yeah.
I've not done that, so I think it helps a little bit. Like I said, I had that massive outburst of anger at the start. It was the 5 stages of grief, but it went from anger to almost going the vom on the Western Ring Road. So I definitely felt it, but because even when we kicked that first goal, the friend I was with was like, "Yeah, we're gonna take selfies of ourselves when we win this and all that." I'm like, "Shut up! I don't want to hear it. I'm not confident."
I thought we were going to win.
Deep down, I thought we are going to lose.
Well, I thought we were going to win by 50 points after that. I thought we were just going to run away with it. And then as soon as they kicked the next 2, I think they kicked 2 quite quickly. Yeah. I knew straight away then. I said, no, we're going to lose this. I wrote to my brother-in-law who's Geelong, and I said, you've got this. And then when they kept sort of kicking goals, I thought, oh, we're going to lose this by a few goals.
Yeah, but we did well to survive.
Yeah. And as I said, would I have felt this dejected if we had let them run over us and we hadn't kicked a couple of goals sort of in between? And then, had we not kicked 3 goals that quarter or whatever we kicked and they'd won by 3 goals or something, would we have... I guess you'd still feel dejected.
I reckon you'd be angrier.
Yeah, because we blew... I don't know.
You'd be angrier, but you wouldn't have your soul crushed.
Yeah.
In an industrial press. So it's kind of up and down. It's like I said, if they'd got that point instead of it being called out on the full, who knows what would have happened from there. We might have kicked it straight down their throat and come back for a goal. But it's likely that the scenario would not have ended the way it did with Nev one-on-one with a defender, losing the marking contest and then him kicking the bloody goal after the siren. We would have lost in more standard fashion. Sorry, every time I'm on, I seem to leave us on a depressing note.
Now we need banner chat or something. Just to...
Sorry about that, listeners. I hope you can still receive the podcast from inside your oven.
Well, we still have over 80 people listening, so we're doing all right.
Well, we wish the other 20 well.
Yes.
With their therapy.
All right, boys. And we just gained 3 extra listeners. Thank you very much. Well, that's another week gone. Let's hope for better days ahead. None of you boys, I guess, aren't travelling to Adelaide. I think, Super Mikado, your travel days are over.
I was tempted when we beat them the last time. I was about to book a ticket. And then I thought, no, don't do that. And then when Lever did his knee, I thought, no, definitely don't do that. Yes, I do not want to go and grapple with any more local yokels.
Yeah. All right, well... That's been another episode of Demonland. If you want to follow us, if you're listening to this podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes or stream it through SoundCloud. You can get on the website at www.demonland.com. Join us on the forum and celebrate and commiserate with us each week. Twitter, Demonland, at Demonland, Facebook, facebook.com/Demonland31 or Instagram at Demonland31. That's how you can find us. Go D's.